Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Canada Today on Muslim Network TV. We are bringing to you every week topics and conversations that are critical, that are timely, and that are sometimes sensitive. And today is one of those days where we're going to be talking about sometimes a taboo topic that has a lot of stigma attached to it in our community in particular, in the Muslim community in particular, but even in the wider society, it's a topic that not everybody is comfortable talking about. And we're talking about a topic that relates to mental health and suicide, unfortunately. And as a trigger warning, of course, this is a sensitive conversation we're going to be having today. So just be mindful of the types of conversations and topics and themes we're going to be discussing. Did you know, according to a study, about 24% of all deaths among 15 to 24-year-olds in Canada are actually young people, are based on or due to suicide. Suicide is considered the second leading cause of death among youth or young adults between ages 15 to 34. And suicide rates are approximately 3 times higher among men than women. So to discuss this trend and discuss something very specific, a recent development in the Muslim community and more specifically in the Bengali community in Canada, we wanted to talk to two wonderful individuals and community leaders and mental health experts in our community. It's my pleasure to first introduce Rufaida Mohammed. She is a Canadian social worker and a not-for-profit strategist. She currently contributes her time and expertise to special projects at Naseeha Mental Health, which is a not-for-profit organization that provides anonymous, non-judgmental, confidential, toll-free support for young people experiencing personal challenges in life. And Rufaida joins us with a Bachelor of Social Work from McMaster School of Social Work. And I have the pleasure of knowing Rufaida from our university days, almost not dating ourselves too much, but almost 20 years back. So welcome, Sister Rufaida Mohammed, to Canada Today show.
Thank you so much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
Same here. Thank you. And next, please help us welcome Dr. Imam Uddin. Imam is an award-winning youth worker, counselor, writer, and community developer, and a volunteer. He currently works as a full-time youth career specialist. He joins us with unique, diverse industry experience in settlement and employment, serve agencies, international not-for-profit work, and in the media. Imam holds a Bachelor of Social Science in Public Administration and a Master of Public Administration and a postgraduate journalism diploma in journalism from National University in Bangladesh. Thank you very much, Brother Imam Uddin, for being here on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure.
Great, thank you. So, you know, this conversation and this interview was sparked by a recent or relatively recent study that was an article or story that was published on CBC about 13 young men in the Canadian Bengali community who tragically died by suicide. So I wanted to help our audience who may not be familiar with this particular CBC story, if you can shed some light on what was this story about, and what was this article about, and what was it highlighting? If you can help us sort of get an idea a little bit about what this article itself was about before we get into your research, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Taha. And this is a report published on CBC 28 September, and it based one of our research findings, youth suicide in Bengali community, basically. And this is the title. So we conducted a research is basically started from 2017, and it is a long time to conduct the research because of we had no fund for it. We just voluntarily done this research. The reason we did this, basically, you mentioned that 13 youths took their lives, and it is like we actually don't know how many youths took their life. It is like whatever we know, there are so many lives, maybe we don't know. So it's like strike us, and basically we thought that like this is a very big problem in our community, like Bengali community in Toronto, not only in our community, in other communities as well. So then we decided to do some like what is the reason behind them, and based on this, then we started the research, and based on our findings, then CBC contacted us, and they made a story about that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And we'll talk about the actual research in just a moment. Rufaida, I wanted to ask you, I mean, when you first came across this article, what was your first reaction, and what went into in your mind? What were some of the emotions that you experienced when you saw this piece in the media?
Well, it's exceptionally disheartening. Being in the field, every story that you come across, there's an element of attachment that, a family member is experiencing this loss, a community is experiencing this loss, friends that are around that person is experiencing this loss. And, it strikes a chord in terms of, what can we do, or what are we not doing enough of to prevent these scenarios and these situations from playing themselves out. And I think that was just, the initial reaction I had was, how can we do better to support these vulnerable youth?
Well, thank you for sharing that. So, Imam, let's talk a little bit more about the actual study itself. First of all, how did you guys, and my understanding is you, had a great team of social workers, professional mental health experts who came together from the Bengali community in Canada, in Toronto area, and thought, you know what, let's do some research, as you talked about. So how did you go about doing that research? What were some of the, elements and tools you used to actually make it happen over the past, almost 3 years that you did this research?
Right. Thank you. Like we started in 2017, when there are few especially one of the youth took his life. You see the CBC news, he struck all the community. And then we discussed with some academics, like one of the academics is Purnima George. She's the professor of Ryerson University. And what strategy, what methodology we will be using. And then we form our team, like social worker, researcher. We have 3 other researchers with us. Like one is Gola Mustafa, he's one of our director program and services. Another person is Naseeha Ahmed, he's a registered social worker and graduated from Ryerson University social work. And the other one is Imam Uddin. He has a PhD in law. So there is a combination. Then we go for participatory action research. It was very difficult to reach the youth in our community. People are not want to discuss about that because there are a lot of stigma, and especially reaching youth is very difficult. So we just our respondent only male youth, like 17 male youth we reached, and we conducted a participatory action research, and there are series of focus group discussions. This is basically our methodology, and we also discussed about the parents as well, 10 parents. So based on this, we conducted this research, and all the findings comes through this one.
Excellent. So how many parents did you ended up interviewing or doing focus groups with?
It's around 10 parents.
Great. And you said 70 to 80 youth? Is that what you, as I heard?
17.
Oh, 17 youth. That's great. Yes. Okay. So after let me just ask. I know you mentioned something about in passing about, of course, the stigma and you were having a hard time getting young people, especially, to be part of this. I was curious, what were the reactions from the families who themselves, of course, went through this experience of having lost somebody, of course, due to suicide. What were some of the reactions you heard from either family members or parents themselves or young people when you started this research, given all the stigma that is attached to it?
Well, we try to reach like who lost their family members, but they are not interested to talk. Basically, they have a lot of pains. So it's like they said, I especially contacted few parents about that, like and the family member as well, and they said like if you ask me these questions, it will take more pain to me. Like I remember my situation, so we cannot reach them that much, and so basically we reach like friends. Like I can give you an example. Like you took his life, and we conducted some friends, classmates, like who are very close to them. So the respondent we selected mostly somehow they are connected with other youth who already took their life.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. So Rufaida, I wanted to ask you, I mean, you are a professional in this industry and you have been seeing all sorts of trends, and we'll talk about the trends in a moment. But I wanted to ask you, when you saw this study and you came across the study itself and the findings, why do you think something like this is critical to our community and for the youth development and youth mental health in Canada?
Yeah, I really applaud Dr. Uddin, for his initiative on this, research paper, because, when we kind of go into the field to kind of, source information about, how youth are kind of, what's going on in their heads, what are the relationships with family members, how are things breaking down at the more granular level? Like, what are their thoughts? What are the factors influencing them to consider suicide? So he was able to remarkably get these youth in a room and have conversations with youth that can enlighten us as to what their experiences have been, and as well with their parents. And what's interesting is that our community is very closed off. They prefer not to share information about suicides. They prefer not to talk about suicides. It's very much taboo in our community. It's very much, and when I say community, I'm saying across the board culturally. In the South Asian community or in the Muslim community, I want to use really broad terms that it prevents us from seeking help. It prevents us from talking about it. It prevents us from really educating ourselves about it. It's very much a taboo topic. So the fact that Dr. Uddin was able to have these focus groups and get really good information from individuals, it actualizes and contextualizes suicide, in our society. So that's really, really critical. So yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and definitely. I mean, as you mentioned, now we have some concrete facts and studies to back what you have already been seeing and observing and advocating for all these years. So definitely, thank you very much, and congratulations, of course, to BIES and your team for making this happen. So let's talk about some of the key findings Imam, that you found in your study. What are some of those key findings you came across, and were there any surprises when you started doing this, and you especially when you concluded, especially with those results, basically?
Right. The findings, interesting findings we find like by this research. One is like the communication gap between parents and the youth, like a huge communication gap among them, which like they don't communicate with properly with parents. Like they don't like they have a problem, mental health problem, or parents don't want to share with anything with like their youth. So there are strong gap between parents and youth. This is one of the findings, major findings. The other findings is like there are a lot of pressures on youth, like they have to be like from the parents side, like parents are migrated from other countries, especially Bengali parents. They want what they like, they cannot do their life in Toronto, so they expect from their child, they expect like you have to be doctor, you have to be engineer, or you have to be like chartered accountant, something like that. So this is like they have extra pressure. This is like pressure study. They don't realize like whether their um, uh, son can do that. So this is another finding. The other findings is like is sometimes pressure about like choosing partner, like when a youth like they choose a friend like they are. So this is another pressure. No, you cannot go like meet with this, you cannot do this, you have to be do this. So this is like they don't have that much trust to their parents. Like the relationship is slowly like is a huge gap. Is like so this is other findings. So there are a lot of findings like these basically, and another one is like their weakness. Like parents especially don't give the, appreciate their like what is their strength. They just highlight weakness. Oh, you don't do this. The other they compare with other people, like other youth. Oh, this person is doing better, why you are not doing this one? So this is like they feel very down, like, oh, I cannot do this. Another one like especially Muslim and the South Asian community is like they think okay, this person has a like big house, this person has a big very nice car. So they, oh, we don't have this one. So they feel very down. Why we are not this? So there are a lot of issues like behind this, which come we got from the research findings.
Mm. So, Rufaida, I mean, did you see any parallels or surprises in the survey results that you came across? I mean, based on your experience with the wider Muslim community, are you seeing similar trends in the other first-generation immigrant communities and their children? I wonder what your experience has to say about these results, essentially, and speak to these results.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Dr. Uddin definitely, captured a lot of, the key factors that influence, these disconnects, happening between, parents and children, or, children or youth, in society and the community overall. But I would say that, there's this continuum that exists. And what I mean by that is that whether it's the, Bengali community or, other, populations, it's that immigrant kind of translation. So immigrant families come, Dr. Uddin identified the broken dream. So as an immigrant, you come with the hope that your children will be able to, you know, as he had mentioned, you know, become that doctor, that lawyer. But these youth really grow up in a split identity. Their identity is, you know, they're in almost in an identity crisis, because they live with the traditional values and beliefs that their families want to instill in them. But, you know, as they leave their home, as Dr. Uddin was saying, that, you know, they have these, you know, societal pressures. And so they have to traverse both sides. Other things are, you know, families aren't equipped, or, you know, parents aren't equipped perhaps, and I don't want to put this on the parents per se, right, because that's not fair either. You know, both sides really have to learn to have those conversations about issues that they're facing. And there's intergenerational abuse, there's intergenerational trauma, and because of this, sometimes, you know, with that simple notion, it's difficult to break out of that cycle. And here is where it's really critical that we reach out to resources that can bridge those gaps. So through educational programs, through workshops that are provided by, you know, community organizations, that's how we begin to like break that cycle. So these trends are very common across the board. Absolutely, for sure.
Excellent, thank you. And this is a good segue into actually what the study also identified as really the, I guess, the crux of the actual problem that led many of these young people to the final, you know, unfortunately, fate of committing suicide. And that had to do with some barriers to access to mental health services, as your study identified. So I want to hear from both of you, and I'll start with Dr. Uddin first. You mentioned in the study, your study highlights the fact that you know, the real problem at the end was that there was just no either awareness, or there was no desire for XYZ reasons for the, you know, the community or even these young people themselves to access help and resources that could have probably saved lives. So tell us a little bit about what you discovered, I mean, after you did all those interviews, Dr. Uddin.
Thank you. And basically, Dr. Rufaida mentioned that like there are a lot of lack of resources and everything in the community they don't know, and like stigma, taboo. So this is the reason like people have like a lot of mental health pressure going on, mental health challenges going on. They don't want to go to the like doctors. They don't want to go to the resources. They don't want to share with others, so that they don't know exactly where the resources are. One thing I forgot to mention, like this is like we our findings from the youth, but as well we have findings from the parents also. Parents told us like the mental health problems is like is neglected in our community. So they feel is like racism. They have like unemployment issues and so many issues they have in their life. So this is the reason they cannot like they feel mental health challenges. This is another one, so like from the part of the parents findings. So like parents and youth, they don't share like they have the problems, and they don't want to help from others. So if someone helps from others, then it is the question for resources, like where are you to get the resources. Even they have family doctors, they don't know like if they have challenges. Sometimes they don't want to share even their family doctors, even they have mental health problems. So this is like this is very surprising us, like why they don't want to discuss this one. They think like if this information goes out that they have the mental health, even parents, even youth or family member. So it is like people will know like in their community, and they will treat them differently, someone. So this is one of the issues. And other issues is they don't have the like any place to spend their time, like quality time. Youth and the parents, like, okay, so they don't want like, you know, like sometimes in our community, especially Bengali community, a lot of youth, they don't, parents don't want to keep them to meet with other community members. So
Mm.
they spend their time mostly alone, like sometimes withdrawal behavior. So they
Mm.
don't, so they, from the pressure from the parents, like if you meet with other community, maybe you'll go to marry someone else, some community. So this is like so many issues like inside there. So
Mm.
those are the things. So and there are not lot of resources in the community, but there are a lot of resources out there, but not especially in the Bengali community, like providing mental health support. Uh,
Mm.
so we started our Bengali Information and Employment Services after releasing this report. We started supporting mental health support in partnership with Canadian Red Cross.
Excellent. Rufaida, do you have anything to chime in here with?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just wanted to just quickly mention, just on the side, is that you know, I'm not a doctor. I am a social worker, but don't have that qualification just as of yet. So I apologize and ask for your forgiveness. But I don't have that designation. I do want to say that, you know, one of the winning qualities of you know, helplines, you know, kids helpline, and particularly Naseeha's helpline, is that there is this anonymity that's attached to it. So it allows some of those barriers to come down, and the barrier I'm talking about is you know, reaching out to resources without being known. So you know, with our phone lines being open from 12 to 9, you know, 7 days a week, you know, you can have a parent, a mom or a dad calling in and speaking to one counselor, and at the very same time, you can have their youth, their son, their daughter, or teenager calling and speaking to another counselor, and they would never know.
Mm.
And that anonymity allows people to kind of like reach out, you know, to talk about their issues, to talk about their problems, to talk about their concerns. And we always provide, you know, resources, you know, so that if it's specific, and we have, you know, a listing of resources that you know, are applicable to that individual, you know, we're always wanting that person to have that information. And, you know, we work through like a solution focused approach to the problems. And then, you know, critically, if it is a crisis situation, we're always, you know, triaging and then, you know, referring to first responders. So, you know, I think that more of these kinds of, you know, services that allow there to be, you know, the anonymity in place will kind of like, break down those barriers. Just a humble thought there.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. So, I mean, some of the key findings based on your research, Dr. Uddin, you know, included, and I'm just sort of recapping, the biggest one being that you highlight is really the communication gap between children and parents. Other one being a lot of pressure to succeed in this life, and whatever that success means could mean different things to different people and to different parents even. Yeah. And may change, you know, for even based on phase of life you're in. And the third one, you know, which was really more of a barrier you talked about, is really lack of awareness and even desire because of taboo reasons to access mental health and support and any help. So I wanted to talk to both of you about this issue that we hear all the time. You hear it from imams in the community, we hear about it from parents, we hear about it from children, we hear about it from all stakeholders actually in you know, in when it comes to youth development and education. We hear it from teachers, and that is really this parent and children divide. And the communication gap. So I wanted to hear from you. What are some of your recommendations, Imam, you know, based on your research and report so far, on dealing with this particular problem? And I want to hear also from Rufaida your thoughts on it.
Thank you. First, I would like to clarify, I don't have the PhD, so I am not the doctor. I have the master's degree. So, and our recommendation basically is like parenting awareness sessions, like with social dialogues, encouraging physical, recreational, and social activities for both children and their parents, promoting meditation and mindfulness among children and parents, arranging non-competitive games among children, and arranging separate parties for children. Like parents sometimes organize parties. They don't like to share their information. So we recommend, basically those are the major recommendation from our research report. And one is like the parenting awareness session is very key in our findings. Like if parents like start communication with their child, it has a very good result. I have a son and a daughter. When these reports like go out, is published, then I have changed like my attitude to my child. Like, okay, I have to play to their every opinion. Like I have to try to know what they want to do, and I want to try to keep them happy. So these kinds of things usually not come from everybody. So if we can organize more awareness program like parenting sessions, so that will be helpful.
Excellent. Sister Rufaida, do you have anything to share on this?
Yeah, no, some of the recommendations come with, a deeper sense of realization in terms of how, expectations are grown, for example, when children are young and as they kind of, go into like their teenage years and young adulthood. And so, some of the conflict is sourced from like a balance between like, the traditional values and more contemporary societal values, freedom and pressure. And Imam Uddin, definitely identifies these in his research, finding a happy medium between, the understanding of allowing youth to kind of like make some choices, but, there are choices that are informed by parents, that there is good conversation about, wanting to do something and why would you want to do it, and some of the benefits and pros and cons. And these are just constructive conversations to have with youth. Also, just spending time with one another. I think, Imam Uddin said that, parents are stretched in the home environment. They're maintaining full-time jobs. They've got commitments, with their community engagement, or, maybe there are health conditions. Like they're just managing a lot. And then of course the well-being of their children, sometimes it does fall to the wayside. And, kids do indicate that, the mentality with the immigrant population. And, I'm speaking of myself, my parents came here in the 70s, and, obviously it was like work hard in school and either become a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or an accountant. And so there's really a stress on, doing well academically, and the weaknesses are sought out as opposed to focusing on the strengths. And that was another indication that was mentioned in the paper, the research paper, and teaching kids how to accept failure. And failures aren't really essentially failures, but opportunities to learn, opportunities to, change your trajectory, opportunities to see what you don't like and what you do like, and assessing, the struggles for what they are, as opposed to putting, individuals under like a label of blaming. These are all, avenues of repairing and building strained relationships, and removing the competition between siblings or between, family members. This was also indicated. And and you know, when relationships become strained, recognizing that they're strained, and then moving towards an approach where they can be reconciled, because these relationships, you know, foster relationships in the future, in employment relationships, in spousal relationships, as they enter into, you know, married life. You know, these are, you know, nurturing years where we're teaching as we go. So, you know, there isn't, we often conceive of myths associated with suicide that, you know, people may talk about it, but, oh, you know, they don't mean it, like, you know, offhandedly, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, I'm just gonna kill myself. But, you know, it's a joke, it's offhanded. But in some cases, you know, if someone's hinting at it, like, we should take it at face value. You know, and some of the myths associated with suicide is that, well, if I talk about it, then they're going to think about it more, and then they're going to actually do it. So I don't want to talk about it. Or like, you know, they seem to be having a perfect life. You know, they've got the grades, they've got a part-time job, they've got really great friends, but no one really knows what's happening on the inside. Like, you know, so building those opportunities to have, you know, conversations, and, you know, in having, in meeting with kids in the hospital setting, and just, you know, some of the work that I've done with institutions is that, you know, they really value, you know, the interest parents play in their lives, just even asking them how their day went, even having a meal together, or just showing interest. And it doesn't mean like planning a huge, you know, weekend outing, and, you know, it is just small amounts, small doses during the day, that keeps parents vested in the interest and the well-being of the children, and children and youth and young adults kind of recognize that those are the repairing moments in the relationship.
That's excellent. Thank you very much for sharing some very, very practical tips and insights here. I wanted to ask, since you brought this up, actually, it's a very good point, you know, about those people, young kids right now who may be contemplating suicide, and God forbid, you know, they go take further steps and do it. What can parents, and even I would say community leaders, community members, do at this point to, inshallah, prevent some disaster to happen? What are some of the things you would recommend they do? What kind of resources you would recommend that they actually reach out to hopefully, you know, abort such thoughts?
Is that me?
Yes,
or is
for you. Sorry, I mean, for you. Yes.
Thank you. So, you know, some of the warning signs, and you know, by no means is this kind of like, you know, the rule book, but they are definitely suggestions, and there are perhaps some tips, but really, there are really amazing programs out there, such as Safe Talk, such as Suicide Assist training, and these are active ways of learning more about approaching suicide. And, you know, you can take these workshops online. Naseeha also has a suicide intervention or prevention toolkit that we often go into community settings and teach community groups about, you know, the warning signs, the myths, you know, the approaches. But certainly, you know, be prepared, you know, to look at, you know, changes in behavior. Be prepared to look at how, you know, emotions might be changing, how their thoughts might be changing. You know, look at their physical appearance. Like, notice that, you know, these are things that are indications that something else is going on inside. You might even see that, you know, they're talking about it a little bit more. You might see that they're actually making open statements about threat to do it. You might see that, you know, they express feelings of like hopelessness or helplessness or worthlessness, for example. They may be doing strange things like writing a goodbye letter, or leaving, you know, text messages, or putting something on Facebook, or, you know, leaving, you know, messages on, you know, calling people and leaving messages that you know, that might be out of the ordinary. So, you know, these are some of the warning signs that you definitely have to look for. other things are like making arrangements. So they may, you know, have possessions that they start giving away just out of the blue. And that might be, you know, something that's quite different, for example. So, you know, you're looking at like these behaviors that, you know, are like, you know, off to the center and not usual. And why people do it, like there are myriads of reasons why. You know, the depth of the psyche could, you know, there could be traumatic factors, there could be abuse and neglect, as you know, Imam Uddin had mentioned earlier. You know, there could be a family history of suicide. They could have experienced extreme loss in a short amount of time. There could be different kinds of pressures. You know, relationship problems, financial pressures. There could be, you know, extreme forms of bullying, Islamophobia, you know, and all of these pressures, you know, every individual is able to handle just enough. And when it tips a little bit further, it becomes unbearable. These pressures I'm speaking about. And so the processing at times can be, you know, like they need to escape. So suicide is a route out, or you know, that they struggle to cope in such a degree that, you know, this is like you know, there is no other way. So this again is a route out, or there's a lack of meaning in their lives. So that's where that hopelessness. So, you know, these are kind of like some of like the more critical things that, you know, signs or reasoning behind. And then just in terms of like the intervention piece, and I'm just going to mention just a few because I'm cognizant of our time, is that, you know, you're looking for these warning signs, changing of behavior and emotions, and, you know, appearance, and just some of those things we discussed. And, you know, rather than you have to approach individuals that you may find that, you know, are emotionally distraught in a very empathetic and you know, approaching it while building a rapport. And that empathy is deep rooted in the sense that you want the well-being to be established for this person. So approaching with an empathetic ear and building rapport, and then be courageous in just directly asking the question, are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about taking your life? Like, be very direct, because it's at a serious stage where you just have to ask that question. And they may say yes, and don't be surprised by that. Like, you have to know that you're intervening and you're working to find out more and how you can help. And so be very, you know, empathetic in like listening and trying to understand, and, you know, allowing them to explain. And less of sharing of yourself. Well, this what's happened to me, and this is what I think. No. Really kind of come at it from their perspective. And then, you know, try to pinpoint some of the more positive reasons, like, you know, what are your reasons for living? So you're trying to build a little bit of hope there, and you know, trying to shift the thought a little bit. And these are just quick kind of tips. You might also want to just like assess for severity, like in a scale of 1 to 10, like how do you have a plan? What is that plan? Ask them in detail. They will share it with you if they're very, very serious, you know, like that they're imminent about, you know, committing. And as well, they may say from a 1 to 10, I'm 20. And that's happened. People have said, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm 20. And then that answer alone is like, we're on the phone with 911. Like, that's a direct indication. And then you develop a safety plan. Well, okay, like, you know, is there anyone you can call? You know, is there anybody, you know, can I come and visit you right now? Like, can you stay where you are? Like, you know, is there anyone around you that you can see, that, you know, you can walk to? Stay with me on the phone, or, you know, whatever the case is. You know, these are just kind of like some of the quick tips of intervention, but it's certainly building a rapport and establishing a relationship with that person that you might suspect might have suicidal ideation. And really, you know, the bottom line here is to really call 911. I can't stress that enough. You know, don't take it into your own hands in the sense like, and I'm going to develop a safety plan with you. Yes, that is critical and that's important, but really turn it over to, first responders, like the experts, because their sense of self is very delicate at these stages. And so, you want to make sure that, the appropriate mental health or, medical experts are intervening to help and save that person. So I apologize. I spoke a lot. I do apologize.
Much needed. Thank you so much. That was awesome and sad at the same time. But I'm glad you actually, that's exactly what I think we all need to hear. God forbid something like that happens in your family, in your community. What are those trigger signs? What are those warning signs? And what are those steps we need to take to actually ensure that it doesn't ever happen again? I wanted to, there are a couple of questions we want to end with, given our time now, and there's so much we can talk about, of course, such a broad topic, and love to have more conversations about this in the near future, especially about mental health in general. Sure. I wanted to ask both of you about the wonderful work that your organizations have been doing. I know both of you have touched a little bit upon it, but I wanted to start off with Brother Imam Uddin to share what is your organization doing. I mean, I find it interesting that this group is essentially supposed to be, an employment settlement type of service, and yet you guys actually took this bold initiative of actually conducting this study on youth and suicide. So talk a little bit about what you do and what kind of services you're offering in the Canadian Toronto Bengali community, and then we're going to hear from, of course, Sister Rufaida about Naseeha Mental Health as well.
Thank you, Taha. And I would like to give a big thank you to Dr. Rufaida. She mentioned very nicely, like, all the resources, what need to do, and I love that. Like, whenever someone feel changes in behavior or like some sign of suicide, what kind of so what need to do. So these are very good information everybody have to know. So the Bengali Information and Employment Services basically is a non-profit community organization we established in 2011. I migrated from Bangladesh to Canada in 2010, and we three people just try to help people finding employment. Basically, we are struggling with finding employment. So our thinking was like to help people finding employment. But when we started helping employment, and then we found like employment is just only one problem. There are a lot of community issues going on. There are a lot of community problems, needs. Then we try to help like senior. We try to help youth. So we have formed a youth council, like helping youth, engaging youth in our organization. Right now, we have more than 50 youth connecting with us, like in our youth council. It is not only Bengali youth, it is like from all the community. Like I think Bengali, like around 10 or 12, most of them from other communities, like these youth councils. So we are helping youth. We are helping seniors, like funding from like Service Canada in their like mental health, in their senior abuse, these kinds of issues. And we have right now the other programs is especially like research is one of our key. Like, what is the problem? The first we conducted research on like who are immigrant here, their employment status, like how many people immigrated here, what was their profession in the like in Bangladesh, like what they did, now what they are doing. So we found that like within 10 years, immigrant who migrated from like Bangladesh and come here, there are only 5 to 8% are get like join professional jobs. It was like we published this report in 2014. So this is our first research report, and this is like mental health one is our second research report. So research is one, and the most important part is like advocacy, like building awareness in the community. Like we try to make aware people, like for example, the mental health issues. Like this is the now youth mental health. Like we are going to organize a workshop on November 1st. It's like senior mental health issues. So every issues we are trying to make like people aware in our community. Like a lot of people, the only problem we found in our community is like lack of information, lack of so if they know the information, like what is the actually what is the like how to apply for, like for example housing, community housing, how they don't know. They I I met one of the client like 3 4 days ago. She was like separated with her husband 8 9 months ago. She does not have any money in bank. She does not know even social assistance program in Canada. So just right away I helped her like applying social assistance, and she got like within 2 days she got the money. So this is the problem in our community. People are not like that much aware. They don't know the information. So we try to help people providing information and like addressing community issues.
MashaAllah, that's inspirational. Thank you very much for sharing that. Sister Rufaida, tell us about a little bit about Naseeha.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, the organization has a few streams, and one of them is definitely our crisis line. So that is open, you know, 7 days a week from 12 to 9 p.m., 12 noon to 9 p.m. We also have a text line. So we have peer-to-peer support of counselors there to, you know, take calls, and the calls come in from all over the world, but essentially they center on, like, you know, relationships, or, you know, perhaps there are, you know, issues, you know, academically, perhaps there are, you know, faith-based issues. Some of them are domestic violence. Some of them have to do with like substance abuse. Some of them have to do with, you know, pornography, addiction. Like it's a whole, you know, slew of depression, anxiety. These are all various forms of, you know, issues that people do call in about. And so, you know, our counselors are there to kind of like, you know, provide a solution-focused approach to more essentially to actively listen to our callers, and to provide resources. You know, we always encourage our callers to, you know, call back again. It's non-judgmental. It's, you know, bias-free. You know, we are there to just support the individual through the difficulties that they're experiencing. And of course, there's a text line as well if you do not want to call in. We also have an education and outreach team or department, and that really is about, you know, going into the community. So, you know, we'll partner up with like Toronto Board of Education. We'll partner up with like private Islamic schools, or we'll partner up with hospitals, and really just bring, you know, information about, you know, cultural, you know, disparities, or, you know, associated with mental health, and really educate the population. So, you know, when we go into Islamic schools, for example, it's really teaching parents about, you know, what is depression, what is anxiety, what is the symptoms of it, what do you need to look for, how to have those conversations, you know, what are the warning signs, like just really kind of like meeting people where they are at the grassroots level. So that's our education and outreach team. And of course, you know, we engage in webinars. So during COVID, you know, we had heightened amount of calls that were coming in, you know, a lot of individuals expressing higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of depression because of the lockdown, because of the nature of the virus and contaminancy. So people were just, you know, being triggered themselves because they may have concurrent disorders. So you know, we tried to provide a number of webinars because that was the only way we could actually bring mental health education into the homes of individuals, and to be able to kind of like support them through the initial stages of the lockdown. So we also have a number of like literature, so that we offer, you know, to different populations. We have a crisis intervention. So if any families or individuals are in crisis, we will send out a team to kind of like, as first responders, and work with first responders to kind of like bridge the gaps culturally. We are now piloting our web therapy. So we're partnering with a couple of organizations in the community, SMILE as well as NZF, to offer marginalized communities that are Zakat eligible, for example. They may not be able to afford therapy, so we want to bring it to their doorstep and alleviate that barrier, that financial barrier. Other areas are, I'm just thinking of just some of the newer projects. We're definitely in the US in terms of partnering with organizations and doing webinars in the US. So, our website is you can just access us, just Google Naseeha Mental Health, and, you'll see a number of, our different departments and how people can get involved and access information and send us an email at info@naseeha.net. So yeah, I'm, we're available is what I'm saying.
Awesome. I mean, you guys are phenomenal. I've always been a great fan of this incredible work that Naseeha does. Sure. And thank you for doing this for our young next generation of young Muslims and youth, and of course for the wider community as well, regardless of their age. But young people are the ones who are suffering. And so thank you for being there for them. One of the things I realized almost 10 years ago, I remember once, it was actually an Eid day, and it happened to be a Friday as well. So I was going. I actually went to the masjid to actually do a khutbah, and I remember as I was actually going up close to the mimbar, I noticed I was saying Eid Mubarak to people and saying salams, and I noticed some of the people in the management, especially, they were really sad and upset. So I asked, "Everything's okay? Is everything okay?" And, the caretaker of the masjid told me that, we just actually finished a janazah or burial or a funeral prayer for a young girl who committed suicide. And it was so heartbreaking for me. And really, it so weighs so heavily on me, just thinking about the fact that the happiest day of the year for the Muslim community, if a young person, for whatever reason and whatever circumstances, decided to take her life or his life on this day, something has happened, and we have failed as a community. We have failed as a community. So one life lost for whatever reason, due to sometimes our own failures as a community, and maybe as parents as well, is way too much for us to think about and to bear. And for that reason, people like you guys who are doing incredible work and have to deal with such issues all the time, I have a lot of respect for the incredible work you guys are doing. Let me just end by asking you in 1 minute, if you both can share a piece of advice for any young person who is going through a difficult time right now, who is, God forbid, contemplating something. If there's any advice you want to give them, what would that be? Because we're running very close to our end time, getting very close to our end time. Maybe we'll start with Imam Uddin and then Sister Rufaida.
I would like to say, share your feelings with any family members, if possible. They can help you the fast. This is one of the, and if you don't want to share, you can at least share with others, your friends or others, whatever about your feelings. Don't keep itself in you alone.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good point. Sister Rufaida.
Yeah, no, exactly the same sentiment is that, it takes very little to reach out to someone. So, the youth that are out there, it can be a teacher. It can be, someone that's in a class, a classmate that you might not have know too intimate, on a regular basis, but you might have a connection somewhere with someone. It could be the secretary at the school. It could be the principal. It could be, a neighbor. It could be, just anybody. Do not let that opportunity slip by you to reach out for help. That's the most critical piece. And then I want to say vice versa. If you are a friend if you are a teacher, if you are a neighbor, if you are an aunt or an uncle or a cousin, or whatever your affiliation with this person or individual, and you notice something different, something out of the ordinary, take a moment, send a text, make a phone call, reach out. It is, there's two kinds of pains, I remind myself. There's the pain of you get hurt, you stub your toe, and that goes away, right, within a few minutes or so, and it's quite severe. But then there's the pain of regret, and that never goes away. And so, just don't carry that regret that I should have, could have, would have. Just do it. Reach out. And so I'm saying on both sides, don't let the opportunity slip. That's it.
That was tough. And I can see definitely emotional for all of us talking about this topic. So thank you for your courage, and thank you for being in the front lines doing this kind of work. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all the great efforts you guys are doing. And may God bring healing to all the families who are going through such difficult time, dealing with such traumatic experience of losing somebody to suicide. And may God enable us to save more lives. So thank you very much once again, Sister Rufaida and Imam Uddin, for being here. You are a great source of inspiration.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today. There's a lot that we could have talked about, and there's so much more to talk about when it comes to mental health. So keep taking care of yourself, your own mental health. Keep checking up on those around you, especially our youth and especially young adults, and especially young people, young boys and men in our communities, because those are the most vulnerable, it seems, based on all the trends we're seeing. You've heard from amazing experts today about the warning signs, about some solutions, about some resources. So let's take advantage of it, and let's do our part to save more lives, inshallah. Once again, you're watching Taha, you're on Canada Today, which is broadcast on Muslim Network TV every week. Once again, thank you. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.